Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to start our presentation now. Welcome to On-the-Job Training Program Information Session for Businesses. My name is Leanne Johnson, and I am the Systems Director for the Mass Hire Metro North Career Centers, operated by Action for Boston Community Development. Some housekeeping things before we get started. I do want to let everybody know that the session is being recorded. We hope to be able to send it to you afterwards, as well as share it with other businesses that may not have been able to join us today. We did have the cameras turned off and muted all participants upon entry, but please keep the cameras and microphones muted for the duration of the presentation. For attendance purposes, if you can please enter your business name, and your job title in the chat box, that will help us to be able to send you information after the presentation. Throughout the presentation, you can post questions in the chat box and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. If you are calling in, we will have an opportunity to unmute you and allow you to speak and ask any questions at the end of the presentation. So, what is on-the-job training? The on-the-job training program is an earn while you learn model. It's hands-on training that you as the employer design. It assists employers with the cost of hiring and training a new employee. It's an opportunity to train employees and provide knowledge or skills that are essential to the full performance of the job while they are doing the job. It's an investment in the company and in the new employee. It's also an opportunity to train an individual to learn new skills. For example, if you've had to add in new COVID-19 protocols, that can be something that can be included in the on-the-job training program. What are the benefits for you in participating in an on-the-job training program? Well, as an employer, you understand all too well the cost of hiring and training new employees. Benefits of an OJT include reducing the cost of hiring and training employees. Also, we at Mass Hire will provide pre-screened candidates for your position, and then you decide who to hire. You can be reimbursed for a percentage of wages during the pre-agreed upon training period. And workers will earn as they learn and receive job coaching during the training period from Mass Hire career advisors. How does the training program work? First, a Mass Hire Business Services representative will meet with you to understand your hiring needs and to determine if your business is eligible for the program. Then, qualified eligible applicants are matched with your approved job openings as an eligible employer. Then you will interview and choose a candidate to make a job offer. Then our business services representative and a career advisor will meet together with the candidate and go through a skills gap analysis. What that process is that we take the job description and we meet with the individual and we assess and determine what are the skills that they are missing that need to be trained on the job. Once we do that, you as the employer have the opportunity to develop an individualized training plan that will meet both your needs and the employee's needs. After that, the next step will be creating a contract and then having everybody sign off on the contract. You hire the OJT training according to your hiring process and your hiring needs. During the period of the OJT, you can submit payroll records and monthly evaluations to your Mass Hire Business Services representative. You will be reimbursed a percentage of the cost of training during the OJT period. The formula we used is based on the hourly pay of the OJT employee, and we will cover this later on in the presentation. You then provide permanent employment to the trainee after successful completion of the OJT period, and you gain a brand new employee trained by you the way that you need them to be trained. How does the OJT funding and reimbursement work? We have multiple sources of funding that we can access to pay for this program. Which funding sources used will be based both on the eligibility of the candidate and the availability of funds at the time of the OJT. For all of the funding sources, you as an employer will need to meet certain eligibility requirements, which we will also review later in the presentation. The candidate or the applicant also needs to meet eligibility requirements of the particular funding source. We will also cover this later on in the presentation. You must have a full-time and permanent position that the individual will be hired into at the end of the OJT as long as their performance is satisfactory. So during the OJT, you have the opportunity to train this individual, and you also have the opportunity to review their performance and to see how they are a good fit for your company. In relation to reimbursement, currently for our region in Metro North, the reimbursement rate is up to 50% of a trainee's wages. The maximum wage that an OJT trainee can be reimbursed for is up to $27.70 an hour. That is set by the state. An OJT trainee can be paid more. However, the reimbursement rate will apply only to wages up to that amount. So for example, if you pay for the position that the OJT trainee is in $20 an hour, you will be reimbursed at $10 an hour. If the OJT trainee is paid $30 an hour, you would be reimbursed $13.85 an hour, as that is 50% of the $27.70. The maximum time frame of an OJT is 1,040 hours, or the equivalent of 26 weeks at 40 hours a week. Now, not all positions are 40 hours a week. For some companies, you have a different definition of full-time. So depending on the number of hours per week, that may lengthen or lessen the number of weeks of an OJT. And the length of an OJT is based on the individual and the training that is needed. So not all OJTs last the 26 weeks. Some OJTs might be written for 8 weeks. It might be 12 weeks, but it can be up to 26 weeks. So for example, if you were to hire an OJT trainee at $20 an hour, you would be reimbursed the $10 an hour. If they worked a full 40 hours on the OJT, you could be reimbursed $10,400. How do we determine employer eligibility? First, MassHire will complete an OJT employer eligibility checklist with you at your first meeting. You consider this an application for the program. It asks all of your basic information and some other additional questions that help us to figure out how to serve you best. There are 3 main items to employer eligibility. First, you must be in compliance with the Department of Unemployment Assistance. Your MassHire Business Services representative will submit a request for DUA compliance verification. Second, you must have a certificate of good standing dated within the last 3 months that you will provide to your MassHire Business Services representative. And third, you must have an open job order that you are hiring for. Other requirements that we will review during your eligibility checklist as well is that you cannot use OJT funded trainees to replace employees laid off within the last 6 months prior to the date of your application. An OJT trainee is an employee for you on day 1 of training. That means their rate of pay and benefits must be equal to what you would pay others for doing similar work and begin when they would begin for all employees. So if your benefits normally start on day 1, they would start on day 1 of training for the OJT employee. If they don't start for 30 days till after, then that's when they start. But it's all in relation to day 1 of the OJT training. They are now your employee. You must agree to hire them as regular full-time employees when OJT is successfully completed. As long as they meet all of the marks throughout the OJT and their performance is satisfactory, then they should begin working for you continued after the OJT is done. Now let's talk about candidate eligibility. For all of the funding sources, a MassHire team member will assess candidate program eligibility and collect any required documentation. So this is not something that you as an employer will need to do. This is something that we at MassHire will take care of. For all candidates, no matter what funding source we use for the OJT, they must be authorized to work in the United States, and they must meet selective service requirements. If they were required to register, they must have registered. So in addition to those 2 items, one of the following must apply. And based on which one of these following apply, that will help us on the mass hire side determine which funding source to use to pay for the OJT. So they could be temporarily or permanently laid off because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They could be an unemployment insurance claimant currently, or they might have exhausted their unemployment and they're still unemployed. They could be an individual that was self-employed and then became unemployed or significantly underemployed as a result of the pandemic. They might be receiving or have received in the last 6 months some form of public assistance. For example, transitional assistance for dependent children, for families with dependent children, SNAP, or Chapter 115, which is a veteran's benefit. They might currently be experiencing homelessness, or they meet other low income guidelines. And all of this is part of the assessment that the Mass Hire Career Advisor will do with the candidate in order to determine whether or not they're eligible for an OJT. So just to review, all candidates need to be authorized to work in the United States, must be selective service compliant, and one of these items that we just discussed must apply. How will we identify eligible OJT participants? So the candidate has to meet the criteria for the program that will be funding the OJT. There are 2 ways that we can do referrals. The first way is that Mass Hire will search our database for potential candidates. We'll share the job posting with our network of partner organizations and on our social media and everywhere else that we generally market, and internally with our team. We will then pre-screen and make referrals to you for you to interview. And you could also refer potential candidates to us. So if you already have a job posted and you're interviewing candidates and you have a potential candidate and want to see if they might be able to participate in the OJT process, you would refer them to us and we would then assess and determine if they're eligible for the program. These are what we call reverse referrals. So it can work both ways. Now, earlier I mentioned the skills gap analysis, or what we also call a pre-contract. What this entails is the Mass Hire team members meeting with the OJT trainee and assessing their current skill set and experience in relation to the job duties that you've laid out. The analysis will identify where the gaps in skills are and will inform the creation of the training plan. The OJT training will sign off on this pre-contract skills gap analysis. So at this point, we would have done the employer eligibility checklist. We would have determined the eligibility of the OJT trainee. We will have met with the OJT trainee and determined where their skills gap are for your job. And now the business service representative will work with you, the employer, on the OJT training plan. The training plan will be created by you with assistance from Mass Hire as needed. The plan is based on the skills required to carry out the functions of the job. It will be individualized based on the results of the skills gap analysis. You and the trainee will follow the plan during the time of the OJT. How we connect this back to the contract and the monthly progress report is that the training plan itself is embedded into the contract and it's embedded into the monthly progress report. The business services representative will check in with both you, the business, and the candidate on progress towards meeting training goals of the training plan all along through training. This is an example of what a training plan looks like. So on the left-hand side, you can see where the tasks from the job description are listed. We talk about in more description what those skills are. We'll help you to determine about how many hours of training are needed to get someone trained in those skills or to get this individual trained in those skills. We'll talk about how that training happens. Is it verbal instruction? Is it job shadowing? Is it reading and research? And then how we will evaluate whether or not that person meets those skills, whether it's that you observe them, whether they meet performance standards. There's a variety of different ways, and this is just one example. And then this training plan, once it is created, is then put into the contract, and then it is used for the monthly progress report when we meet with you throughout the OJT. Some other examples of training plans We've had CNC operator, we've had people who were machinists. There have been OJTs for medical assistants, for customer service training. There is a wide variety of what an OJT can cover. There really is no limit as long as there is a job opening and there are individuals to fill it who need some additional training in order to be fully qualified to do that job. The next step is a contract startup. At the time of signing the contract or prior to, your MassHire Business Services representative will review with you the invoicing process. They'll review with you the monthly progress report, and they will talk to you about local monitoring. In order to execute the contract, MassHire will prepare the contract and complete all of the information. We will get from you, the employer, who is your signatory, who can sign off on the contract, and their email address. We will send the contract and the signatory information to the funding authority for the OJT. They will review the contract, approve it, and sign it. Once all of this is done, the MassHire Business Service representative will make sure that you are informed that the contract has been approved. Now, the funding authority will depend on which funding source the candidate is eligible for. We work with multiple organizations where funding comes from. So depending on who we are working with for the particular funding will depend on which authority we are signing the contract with. It is possible for you as an employer to host multiple OJT trainings that are funded by different sources, because remember, it's dependent upon the OJT trainee's eligibility. So you could have more than one trainee and have them funded from different sources. What is really important is that the contract has to be fully executed and approved and in place before the candidate's start date. The MassHire team members will communicate with both you as the employer and the candidate on the progress of the contract and notify both parties when contract is fully executed and the candidate is approved to start. So most importantly, throughout this entire process, you have someone assigned to you that will work with you and help walk through all of the steps in the process. In relation to invoicing and the progress report, this happens on a monthly basis. You would submit an invoice with backup documentation to the MassHire Business Service representative along with the monthly progress report. So the progress report is simply a document that's going to be based on the training plan where you will mark the progress of the individual on their training and whether it's sufficient or if there are any issues. And then the backup documentation is generally payroll records, something that shows us the hours that the individual worked and is proof in order for us to apply for the reimbursement. The MassHire representative will review everything for accuracy and will get official signature. Then we will submit on your behalf to the funding authority, and the funding authority will process payment directly to you within 60 days of receipt of the invoice. The timing depends on the funding authority's local process. So depending on which funding source we use, some of the reimbursements happen more quickly than others, but up to 60 days after receipt of the invoice. What are the benefits of partnering with MassHire on OJT? Well, as an employer, you will have a business services representative assigned to you. If at any point during the OJT there are any concerns about the trainee's performance or progress, you can reach out to your contact. MassHire will work together to resolve any potential issues or concerns throughout the training program. The OJT trainee will have a career advisor assigned to them for MassHire. And if at any point during and after the OJT for up to 12 months, the trainee is experiencing any issues related to their success on that job, they can reach out to their career advisor who is there to assist them. The business services representative and the career advisor work together to help everyone be successful. The worksite monitoring. We do have to do at least one monitoring throughout the duration of an OJT. It can be in person or virtual. If it was in person, we would come on site to the business. That is something that you would work out with the business service representative as to what makes sense for you in your business. The monitoring consists of a supervisor interview. So our business service rep will meet with the person you have who is directly supervising the trainee. They will meet with the trainee themselves, and the business service representative is the reviewer. They will put together a report and observations and put it all together for the monitoring. This monitoring goes to our funding sources and is how we continue to maintain the funding for the OJTs. The process also helps us to identify any concerns along the way and allows us to provide appropriate assistance. So as you can see, there are lots of assistance provided. We have the monthly check-ins, we have at least once monitoring, and you have the ability to reach out to us at any time if you need to. After all of those steps are completed, the OJT trainee has completed the training plan successfully. They are now retained by your business as a full-time employee, and you have gained someone that you just trained yourself. That is all of the information on the on-the-job training program. Before we open up for questions, we did also want to include another benefit in here that you could combine with an OJT or could utilize separately if you're not already. That is the work opportunity tax credit. The purpose of this tax credit is to enable certain groups of individuals who have consistently faced barriers to employment to be able to move from receiving public assistance or move from being in a low economic state and into self-sufficiency as they earn a steady income and become contributing taxpayers. At the same time, you as participating employers are compensated by being able to reduce your federal income tax liability. This is the list of targeted groups currently that a work opportunity tax credit can be used for. This presentation will be shared with you after. The importance of sharing this here is that if we go back to eligibility on a candidate or an OJT trainee, many of that eligibility would fall into one of these categories. So we thought it was appropriate to share that here with you, as they may also be able to be eligible for you to get this work opportunity tax credit. The credit cannot be claimed for hours worked during the OJT training period. However, it can be claimed for hours starting on the first day of employment after the training period ends. So you could have the trainee do the OJT training period, you're reimbursed the percentage of wages during that training period, and then on day one after the training period ends, they are now eligible for you to be able to claim the work opportunity tax credit in the future. If you are interested in more information on this credit, you can ask your business services representative, and when they meet with you one-on-one, they can help walk you through the process. As a follow-up to this training session, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint deck, contact information for our business services representatives so that you can engage in the OJT process. We are also going to send you a sample of all of the documents I mentioned, the eligibility checklist for you as the employer so that you know what we would be asking. We'll send you a copy of the skills gap analysis, a sample, so you know what that looks like. We'll send you a sample of the contract so that you know all of the language that is included in the contract. We'll send you a sample of the monthly invoice and the progress report and the monitoring documents so that nothing is a surprise, everything is fully transparent. We will also send you the links to the information on the work opportunity tax credit. So thank you so much for coming to our presentation today. I'm going to take a look in the chat and answer any questions that anybody has, and you can feel free to add questions there. And I will see if I'm able to unmute, or my staff member who is co-hosting could unmute if people have questions. Let me bring up the chat. So far, I think this was just everybody log. Thank you so much, everybody, for putting your contact information in here so that we can send you that information afterwards. Does anybody have any questions? You can type into the chat.